The Marinade.
There's no O in marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone marinade. The
That's
Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle.
Well, I started out as somebody else, bulldozed by some bygone dreams.
Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 77, and our guest is the Kernal. The Kernal is a singer and songwriter like no other, y'all. He takes a classic country sound, throws it in the spin cycle, and hangs it up wet. I am so grateful for this opportunity. The Kernal is our kind of creative, y'all, and you can find all things The Kernal at thekernalmusic.com. That's Kernal with a K.
Well, he walked me once across the jaw. Well, he said I said something weird. Well, I don't recall what it was, but I couldn't shave my beard for nearly 9 weeks after that. The scar tissue's still there. He said you better get started thinking, son, that's gonna be happening everywhere. Say, how long since you loved somebody? How long since you loved somebody?
Hey y'all, before I get into our conversation with the Kernal, I want to give a huge shout out to longtime friend of the Marinade, Jordan, who has joined our Patreon community. Jordan has been a great supporter of the Marinade on Twitter, and now he's a part of our Patreon family. Patreon is a place to support the show. Go to patreon.com/Marinade podcast for the price of a beer or a cup of coffee or whatever thing you buy that you don't necessarily have to buy, but you like to buy. That's like $2 to $10, somewhere in there. You can gain access to Patreon exclusive content, like our show Jason's Journey, where I talk about the moments that shape my creative life. You can also get updates about the show before anyone else. You can join our Patreon happy hours, where we connect on Zoom and get to hang and listen to live performances from some of our favorite songwriters. It's fun. It's just a really fun time. And come on over if you can swing it. We're actually adding a couple of things, something called Jason's Journal. I'm going to release a newsletter with all kinds of information about the show and art that is inspiring me and all those kinds of things. If you like our What I'm Getting Down On segment at the end of the show, that's actually moving over to Patreon. So if you really enjoy that, come on over. For as little as $5, you can get access to What I'm Getting Down On, where I talk about the art that is inspiring me at the moment. Y'all, I'm so honored to bring you my conversation with the Kernal.
A little more than you do.
Kernal!
How's it going?
Good, man. How are you? Well, man, I really appreciate it. This has been so much fun. Like, doing research on an artist who I only recently got into is always such a blast. And I got into you through the most recent single, You Do You. And then I got to do the deep dive and spend the time with your music. And like the thing that jumps out at me when I first listened to it, and then as I go deeper, it has all these layers. But I was like, this is kind of like the first time, and it's different, but it feels like the first time as a teenager I heard Waylon Jennings, the first time I heard some of the, especially like Redheaded Stranger and some of the Willie records that were a little more adventurous. And that is a really cool feeling to have with newer music, right? Where I'm just like, it's not the same thing. I'm not trying to compare necessarily. I'm just saying the feeling that I got, right, was like, oh shit, this is what I felt like the first time I discovered those records.
Well, that's a cool thing to say.
I mean, it's a cool thing to make, man. And I want to get into process and talk about, how you get there. And start with just kind of from the beginning if we can, and just kind of go back to like you grew up around your dad playing music and playing at the Opry and even wear his suit these days. So what was that early education like? Did you know from the beginning, like I'm going to do this? Or did you think like, maybe I'll be a lawyer someday?
Well, my dad always used to tell me that I washed my hands like a doctor, but that didn't quite work out. But no, I don't think I knew from a very early age or anything that I wanted to do music. I always liked music, and was very used to going to the Opry, a lot when I was a kid. I have a twin brother actually, and so we were just always together, and we went probably, I would say at least once a month backstage when we were growing up, pretty much all the time, and a lot of times my mom didn't go. I think it was kind of a break for her. Dad would take us out, we would leave the house at, 4 or 5, and then we wouldn't get back until, 1 in the morning or something. So it was exciting to be out that late, on the weekends and stuff as it is. But so many memories, man, of just seeing anybody you could imagine, like some of my favorite baseball players, when I was growing up, I met them, all kinds of celebrities would be backstage. It was a very sort of small, I don't know if you've ever been backstage at the Opry House before, but it's a small area. It's kind of a U-shaped thing. And the hall comes out on either side of the stage backstage. So, and when I was growing up, the door on stage right that was closest to the stage was Roy Acuff's dressing room. And then on the offstage side was Porter Wagner's dressing room. And so, it was really cool. I remember one time my dad taking us in to meet Roy Acuff, and there was like a little line out of his dressing room, and he was pretty old at this point, and he wasn't terribly agile. And so we walked up, and I'll never forget, he was eating those little Sweet Spot cookies, the little cookies with the Hershey Kiss in them. I just remember being, like 6 or 7 or something, or maybe I was a little older, it could have been 8 or something, but I remember looking up and seeing like, oh wow, he likes those cookies. That's cool. But I have so many cool memories from that. And really I got into music a little later. I started getting into writing when I was in college, and I liked to write poetry and things like that. And eventually merged it with music. So yeah, it was a little later for me, and especially after my dad died, that's when I started all this stuff. The country Kernal stuff was sort of, I've always looked at it like taking up a mantle, and just continuing some of that kind of thing. So yeah,
that's pretty heavy. So there's so much there. The baseball thing I'm super curious about, because I grew up a huge baseball fan, and the idea that you would be there
Javi Lopez. I met Javi Lopez back there one time, and he was my favorite. I was a big Braves kid.
Yeah.
And Ryan Klesko and he were hanging out back there one night, and my brother and I were like, whoa, and like Tommy Lasorda, who just died.
Yeah.
Tommy Lasorda. Just there's all kinds of crazy people. You might see Steven Seagal or somebody. You just never knew who you were going to see back there.
Is there like, and that, I didn't even know about the baseball thing. In my research, anytime I talk to a songwriter who's also a baseball fan, I always have to ask that question, because there's so many, right? It's for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to translate to other sports. It doesn't necessarily on a wide scale, and it doesn't necessarily translate the other way around. I don't know. There's something about songwriting and baseball that work. And I'm just super, like, I don't know if you've given that any thought, but I'm super curious about that connection and like why that might be,
I think there's just there's a lot of corollary with baseball and just the dullness of life. I mean, there's just a lot of it. It's just going, well, we're just kind of waiting for a second. And, it's not like everyone huddles up and then they're all right, break, it's everything just kind of, it's like life. I mean, in some ways, it just kind of, it's a nice way to pass the time. I guess that's why it's America's favorite pastime. But yeah, I think there's something to that. It just kind of feels like life, like normal, just breathing and, just hanging out. There's something about baseball. I've always loved baseball. I like sports. I grew up having to play sports. It's like that's it's kind of a typical Southern male upbringing in that way. If you weren't good at sports, then you better be good at something.
Ain't that the truth? It's like I've talked about that before on the show. I guess it's been a while, so we can revisit it. But the idea that like one of the reasons I didn't grow up playing music, even though I was obsessed with it, is that if you wanted girls, you played sports, and I wanted girls. So like, and where I'm from, it wasn't the guy with the guitar that got the girls.
No.
It was the guy who had the good arm, or the guy who could run fast, or the guy who could hit hard. And so that's why I chased that. And I look back on it and I'm like, well, I can still play guitar. I can't still play sports competitively,
Yeah.
I mean, I do have a pandemic purchase hoop in the yard that I
really
use. Oh, dude, it's
that's cool.
Cheap $200 hoop. Great decision. Like great decision. Because you get to go out and relive those moments from childhood, that nostalgia. Right.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of Southern nostalgia, there's a great line in You Do You, and I don't want to misquote it, so I'm going to pull it up here. But it says, where the only Chick-fil-A back in the day was in the mall. And like the fact that hit me so hard, like, it kind of blows my mind. And you seem to write about fast food a lot. You have a whole song about the taco, living in an abandoned Taco Bell and envisioning a world in which all these Taco Bells are abandoned.
Yeah.
So can we talk about inspiration? Is it that you're in the Chick-fil-A line and you sit down and you start writing, or what does your process look like?
It is funny with the fast food thing, or just big corporations that we kind of just accept and get used to. I think that's something that, for whatever reason, I've gravitated toward. I think in some ways to try to remind myself that these aren't just accepted, or these aren't how do I want to say it? Just things that exist in the world. Like, we can say no to them. But I think with some of those larger monolithic kind of corporations, we kind of just say, well, they've always been here. We tell ourselves that kind of stuff. And we wrap our whole view of the world around these kinds of entities, and to me, I think I like to take a little bit of power out of that. And writing about the Taco Bell, for me, kind of scratches that itch in some ways. There's a song on my new record about a futuristic Walmart that only sells things that are made from marijuana. And so it's called a super marijuana Walmart. And the same thing there. I just had this idea, like, what if somewhere in a rural town in Illinois where a bunch of old people live, they had the first super marijuana Walmart, like how people would freak out, and all that it would represent to them, so there's something about those kind of ideas that I like thinking about, because I like remembering the world before some of these things became so commonplace, and I want to live in a world where those things aren't just accepted, and to me, there's an important thing in there, but also it's just kind of fun material, it's fun to write about things like that. And but yeah, it has come up there. If you look through a lot of my lyrics, there's one too many maybe references to fast food and that kind of stuff, but whatever,
I like that though. Sorry, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna say a part of it too probably is like, I've never heard anybody write a song about this before. That's kind of what makes writing interesting, is you don't want to just contribute to recombinant pastiche, that kind of thing. You want to do something that is that gives you, that's got vitality to it, to you.
For
So that was
sure. And I
powerful.
think that better encapsulates what I was trying to say when I said that when I listened to your music and did the dive into it, that I felt that same feeling that I had when I was first discovering some of those people we now think of as these great, legends of that were outlaws, that, so to speak. That thing you just said, that's the vibe that I get from the music, and the fact that that not only you're willing to go there, but like you crave it, right? It sounds like that you crave going in these places that you wouldn't necessarily think of. It's still rooted, the music's still rooted in country music, for
Yeah.
example. It's still rooted in blues. It's still rooted in some of those classic concepts, but the song's about a fucking taco, moving into a Taco Bell, right? And so
Yeah.
you hear those familiar sounds, but then you say that, and the listener is immediately transported to this weird place that you're ready to go, because it's still rooted in this familiar, but it's this wild ass concept that I'm willing to go out with you on.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it, because to me, a lot of the music is written for a live setting. Particularly, I always envision, we used to do a lot of, flatbed trailer type things when we were growing up. My dad being a musician, and living, we grew up about an hour outside of Nashville, in the middle of nowhere. But he kind of would bring all these Opry people to these weekend. We would cook a hog or a calf, a whole calf overnight, that one of these kind of things. And we used to do these big parties that they just call it the flea market, because it was just a huge long pavilion where they had the flea market, but we would just call it the flea market. And we would have these massive, ridiculous parties down there. Of course, I'm a kid at the time. I have a lot of really crazy memories about some of those parties, but so much of it was built around, okay, we're going to cook some barbecue and get out here and play some music, and Dale Reeves and like these famous people would come down because they loved it. They're like, get a moonshine and some barbecue, and we're all just hanging out. Well, let's get up there and sing some gospel music for a little while, and I just have a lot of memories about that kind of stuff. And I love that kind of setting. And so I like to write country music, because it reminds me of that. It reminds me of what it felt like to be young and to hear those sounds. And I like that I can do that too now, but also kind of, like you said, put my own keep myself interested in the writing side of it, where I'm not just saying, singing covers of the same old thing we've heard. I mean, those are great too, but
Sure.
if you're writing something, then, it's good to stay interested.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for a great cover, and there's a lot to be said for even just like a total homage to something classic. But I do think that, like, so many, and I think we just have access to it now. There are so many people who do that really well, and I'm not complaining about it. It's a nice problem to have, but it just feels like I get to talk all the time to people who do that kind of thing really fucking good. But there's so many of them, and they keep getting better and better and growing. And it's like,
man.
next thing I can't turn my head before some other artist I've never heard of puts out this record that's just perfect. Which is great. I'm not complaining, but it's also really nice to get hit, with some lyrics about fast food, or some lyrics about, or about, I'm blanking on the name of the song. It's on, you sing it on Kernal Live. And I think it's on Light Country, your record Light Country, about the ballerina.
Oh yeah, knock knee ballerina.
Knock knee ballerina, right? So like the wordplay in that song, I mean, it's just like, it just keeps me clipping along. Like, I'm just fascinated by every word, right? And you mentioned so much there that I wanted to get into, especially the live part, like this live sound. Because when I listen, for example, to Light Country, that sounds like it was just straight up tracked live. It sounds like you just recorded that live, rather. And I don't know if that was the case or if that was what you were going for, but that feel and that vibe, I can't wait for this shit to be over so I can see you live. But that's what it sounds like to me, is that you're going for that sound, and that's what you're achieving.
For sure. I mean, there's something, exciting about capturing music that way. When you get set up and you say, all right, everything sounds pretty good. All right, let's just play it, Of course, there are so many different ways to make records, and I enjoy records that are made in a different fashion. I call them Build-A-Bear records. There's a song on my new record that we've just gotten through tracking where I played everything and just, by myself. And it was like, I was with the engineer, Ben Tanner, who's a great keyboard guy. And we got to the point where it's like, oh, you want to put some keys on here? And he's like, no, you do. You've already done everything. Like, let's just make this a U track. So that was fun. But yeah, a lot of light country and a lot of this new record, it's let's just get in there and play. And you can't really replicate the energy of a track when you're building everything like that. It's just a different kind of thing. And I think especially for country, just getting there and play it, and I enjoy doing things that way. It's a lot more exciting.
I think while you were a kid and you were backstage at the Opry and you were having these parties, I'm picturing like Jimmy Martin at your party, like drinking and singing or something, like all these like these wild like ideas in my head, of like these crazy parties and everybody's playing music. Do you think as a kid you were like, maybe you were conscious of it? Do you think you were internalizing that is now kind of coming out of you in your own way?
Yeah, as a kid, I was fascinated by it. I was just sort of enraptured by how someone could go and play an instrument and sing and also be funny and be entertaining, And I think everyone kind of feels that way when they see someone do it well. There's something in you that kind of goes, how do they do that? And anybody that does something really well that you don't know how to do, you're like, well, how do they even do that? I could never do that, So I was always fascinated by it, and of course just exposed to it a lot. So I think it's easy to take for granted, because I was around it so much. But before my dad died, actually, I did express to him that I was getting more interested in that kind of thing, because when I first started trying to write songs, I was really into like Iron and Wine, and into like these like very sort of poetic, 9-minute songs or whatever, and I had 3 songs and I played them for my dad, and he sat there silently the whole time. And I got done with the 3rd song and he said, well, that's abstract. That's all he said. And he was like, that's kind of my dad in a nutshell right there. But yeah, I did express to him later on that I like the idea of what you could do on the stage between someone on the stage in the audience, and that whole interaction. I think I was like reading some stuff about Aristotle, talking about theater like in college, and thinking about some of those kind of the catharsis, that the idea that when you play something out on a stage, you sort of give the opportunity for people in the audience to go through these kind of things that maybe cleanse them in some ways that they wouldn't have otherwise, been able to work through some of these moral issues or whatever. If you do it on a stage. So I got interested in that, and we did have a conversation or two about that before he died, which was cool. I think, he kind of maybe knew that I was leaning more into this kind of thing, because I hadn't really established myself in that way until after he died, with the country thing.
So in college, you mentioned college a couple of times, and so you're going to learn to write, or are you studying philosophy? Are you studying creative writing? Like, what is that whole experience like? And then also, do you think your music now is informed by that college experience, or do you think it would be different if you hadn't gone through that experience?
Yeah, I think so. I did creative writing and did philosophy and stuff too, but my major was creative writing. Yeah. And yeah, I think I actually went to a community college right out of high school. Well, when I graduated high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I've always kind of been a little bit indecisive. And so my dad said, well, son, if you don't know what you want to do, you're going to go to the Army. And I said, okay. And so I signed up, and I went through that, and this freak thing happened where I actually failed my physical because I was playing basketball in high school, and I separated my shoulder like a month before the big physical exam for the Army. And so I got there, and they said, no, we can't admit you right now, but if you go through this and this and this and that, then so many months later you can come back. And somewhere in there I kind of thought, maybe this is a sign I shouldn't go to the Army, maybe, And so like right at the last second, I slid in like Indiana Jones, under the moving wall and signed up for community college. In my first semester, I took normal composition 1 class, and there was a guy, that teacher changed everything for me because he was a poet. He's still there. His name is Jeff Harden. And he walked into the class the first day and started reading a poem. He didn't say, he just was reading a poem. And I was so gripped by it for whatever reason. And I really liked him. And so the first assignment was to write, a short poem. Well, I didn't have a computer. I'm kind of old, I guess. And so I went to my sister's house. She had a computer, and I stayed up to like 4:30 in the morning trying to write this like 10-line poem. And I just obsessed over it, and I wanted it to be good. And somewhere around in that time, I don't know, I just got interested in what you could do with words. And he was a big impact on me, that professor. And I still stay in touch with him to this day. And so that just kind of set me on a course to be interested in writing and what words could do. And that, from that day, I kind of just been interested in all that, so.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so crazy to think like how different your life might've been. Maybe you would have met some similar influence,
I know, yeah.
in the Army or whatever, but damn, man, that's crazy, right? Like how different your life could have been if you ended up in the Army.
I know. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, little things like that. I mean, we all have little moments like that kind of you look back on and say, wow, that everything could have turned out differently if I'd just done one thing different,
How do you think you would have done in the Army? Do you think you were geared for it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would have been fine. My twin brother is actually he's a corporal, not in the Army, but he's a law enforcement guy.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was an Army guy, and I like sports and, whatever, so yeah, I think there would have been certain things that would have been fine, for me. But I think, I think maybe upstairs it could have been a little bit weird for me, to a certain degree. If who knows? I mean, but yeah, I mean, I was just going because I didn't know what else to do.
Right.
And yeah.
Well, I'm glad it worked out the way it did for my own sake, to get to listen to your music and to dive into it. That what you said also really drives home how important good teachers are, and how important at every level, like what a difference a great teacher would make. I mean, I think of the people, I have plenty of teachers I can think of in my life that were either just blips in my academic career or that I didn't care for in some way. And then, and I never think about them. And then I have the ones that like small handful that in some way shaped who I am now, and the impact that they had is so dramatic. And the feelings that I had about that subject matter, whatever it was, that I would not have been all that interested in, but ended up being crazy about. I mean, you end up spending all night trying to write this thing, right? And create this thing. And it launches this whole different trajectory for you, in large part because of the influence of this person. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I love a good teacher. And I still, he's not the only teacher that I've stayed in contact with, and stayed fairly close with from college, just because of that very thing you said, because they made a big impact on me, and on my life, my whole life, even to this day. So yeah, I'm with you on teachers.
Is that you in general, in terms of like relationships? Are you someone who builds those lasting relationships and keeps up with them and puts in that work?
I'm probably not the best at putting in the work. I do kind of get to points where I'm like, where is everybody? And it's like, well, I haven't really, done the work to stay up with people. And I can kind of get a little bit too isolationist. I mean, which has been pretty, I've gotten a lot of good practice over the last year, like everybody else has with that. But I didn't need any practice for that. I was already kind of good at the hermit lifestyle.
Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting side effect of this whole thing, is like, I started to realize how well suited I am for this. Like I'm an introverted extrovert. So like I need to get my energy from other people. but I really like my own company, and I really like staying home, with my dogs and cooking my dinner and doing some writing and reading. But like for example, before the pandemic, one of my favorite things to do was to go to a bar or a coffee shop and read or write. Like because I'm out and I'm getting that energy from other people.
Yeah.
It's also an isolated thing where I'm writing, or it's an individualized thing where I'm reading. But I've realized during the pandemic, like I got to really make the effort because I really like just being to myself, and I didn't realize that before. So it's kind of forced me to recognize that,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I want to talk about the new record. I'm really excited for you, and I'm excited to hear the new songs. And the single "You Do You" is wonderful, and the video is wonderful. That goes for the song "You Do You."
Thanks.
Yeah, I really really dig it. And I'm interested in. You've worked with Ben Tanner before, right? And
Yep.
I'm interested in what that relationship is like, and what that process is like. And then whatever else you can tell us about, like how this record is coming together and what we can expect.
Yeah, I mean, with Ben Tanner, that relationship has been. I don't know if you can hear my dog barking in the background. He's getting his food.
Yeah, we got the same. I have to leave them outside now because our puppy he's in a destructive phase. So these are 7-year-old glasses, because he completely destroyed my glasses the other day.
That's how you know it's a good dog.
Yeah, yeah. We got some good ones.
It's a really good ones. But yeah, with Ben, when I met him, I didn't envision that we would have, have had this relationship for this long. But I was on tour playing bass with Johnny Fritz, and we were opening for the Alabama Shakes at the time. And like I said, I'm really into sports. I'm a big basketball fan, actually. And it was during the NBA Finals. The year that Ray Allen hit that crazy three playing for the Heat. And I was just looking for somewhere. Me and the drummer, Jerry Pentecost, were looking for somewhere to watch this game. We went in this room, and Ben Tanner was the only one sitting there. And right away, we just started talking. I think I made fun of him because he was pulling for the Heat or something. And we just kind of became fast friends. And over the course of that tour, I just mentioned that, hey, I've been trying to write some stuff, and would you ever want to take a listen to it? Because he told me that he was starting a label maybe. And so, yeah, we just started talking, and we've just never really stopped talking since 2013,
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, we did Light Country together. We did this record together. He's a great collaborator, because it's hard to find someone with the technical knowledge that he has, who is also not only willing to say yes to weird ideas and maybe frustratingly weird ideas, but somebody who also is musical, that can give input musically. He's just kind of a total package. He's great to work with. He's very understanding, and like I said, he never just says no. That's a mark of a good collaborator. It's just a lot easier to say yes, and in 3 minutes you'll know if everybody's got their thinking caps on that it was a bad idea, and you can transition. But if you spend all your time saying no, you get balled up in all these different emotional things and all this kind of stuff. And he's been a great collaborator in that way.
That's great. And we should probably, for folks listening, I think most people who listen to the show probably know the name Ben Tanner, but Ben of Alabama Shakes, and then also just a sought after producer, someone who's collaborated with tons and tons of folks. And then Jerry Pentecost was in Amanda Shire's band at some point.
Yeah. Brett Cobb, I think he's working with him.
Okay, yeah. Just for context for all these names, that sometimes I'll get guilty of just like getting on a roll with a guest and talking about these people I love and respect, and forget to say, oh, by the way, Ben's in Alabama Shakes. That's probably an important detail.
Yeah, yeah. He's wanted for murder in 13 states.
Oh man. So what, like, is the record? Did you set out to write a record, the new one, or does it come together in pieces for you? Like when you're putting together an album, what does that look like? And specifically, what does this one look like?
Well, for me, I think a lot of times it goes, There's an interview I listened to with Justin Townes Earle, and he was talking about how a lot of his records are. He said, I write, 10 or 12 songs a year, and those are the songs that go on my record. I kind of feel the same way. There's so many people out there that are very prolific, and they can say, I'm going to write a psych whatever album, and they can just sit down and pump out 10 songs with someone like Daniel Romano or something, who's just so prolific with these different kinds of things. For me, I think I just try to have, I try to write the best song I can write, and by the time a year goes by, you've got a handful, you got 8 or 10 of them or whatever. And so that, I mean, this record came together in that way, that it's, when we started talking about it, I was kind of nervous because I didn't have any songs really. I didn't think I had any songs, but I'm one of these people that has 8,000 voice memos. And so like a lot of times what I'll do at nighttime is I'll pick 2 numbers. I'll say, 16 and 4, and I'll do 16 swipes, and then go down 4, and I'll just hit play and see what that is, and I'm just kind of constantly digging back through things that I've done, just seeing if something catches me. And yeah, I mean, this record kind of came together that way, where it's like, well, this is pretty cool. Maybe I could flesh this out a little bit. And yeah, and we get 10 or 12 tunes that way, and I typically do all the demos kind of myself and kind of get the feel that I want, and then send that around to who we're going to be working with, so that by the time we get to the studio, we're not, deliberating over things. It's sort of like what it is, and then we can kind of just polish it however we want to. I think it'd be cool to make a record a different way. I've been toying with the idea of doing more of like a not like a Bee Gees record, but the Bee Gees, when they would make a record, they didn't have any, they just went in, they said, well, let's see what we got, and they just start like jamming, and which is really remarkable for how many cool things they put out, that they never really had a plan, they just kind of walked in there and made it up. I think it'd be cool to make a record like that, because I haven't quite done that. But this record, yeah, it kind of went in a similar fashion, that kind of got the songs together here and just went and hammered them out in 4 or 5 days, getting a lot of the bulk, and then of course going back and forth. I mean, this record was supposed to be out, I don't know, a year ago or something, over a year, maybe, I don't even know. Time has gotten to be really a weird sort of thing to
Ain't that the truth?
talk about, but yeah.
So how are you scratching the creative itch when you're not writing? If if you're, because you seem like someone who kind of needs it. Maybe not. Maybe you can turn it off and turn it on, but it seems like creativity is something that's constantly there.
Yeah, it's always there, and it doesn't always come out, because I mean, I tried different kinds of writing and things like that. I've never really pushed that side of myself too hard. But try to sit down and write some long form stuff or whatever. And just, I don't know, learning about different things is always important to the creative process. I find that if I'm putting myself in a position to learn new things, then new things have the chance of coming out of me, but if I'm going through a phase where, I haven't picked up a book very much or haven't listened to anything much, it definitely has an influence on my ability to tap into anything, so yeah, it's important to kind of keep a good, it's like when you're reading books, like, at least for me, I'll have like 3 in the wings, just in case I don't like this one anymore, or I get done with this one too fast. I'm not like twiddling my thumbs, it's like I can go straight into something else,
I just had a friend save me on that, man. I finished a couple of books in a row that I loved. I read David Joy's When These Mountains Burn. And right before that, I read a book called A Gentleman in Moscow, and I just fucking adored this book. Like I just had 2 books in a row that I was like so fired up about, and I plowed through them. And then I read another one. I read Gabino Iglesias's Coyote Songs, and I really enjoyed that too. So it's like 3. It's I'm just on a roll, and then I didn't have a plan. And my friend Jen called me up and was like, "I got this book that I think you're really gonna dig," and it was like way out of what I would normally pick up, and and she just showed up. She's like, "Here, just borrow it, give it back when you're done, enjoy it." And it was like, thank you, because I didn't have a plan. I'm with you, man. Like I got to pick the next one up, especially if I'm on a roll, like if I'm on a roll, dude, I need the next one and the next one and the next one. It's just like when I'm writing, and the songs like same thing. If I'm writing songs or if I'm writing short stories, if I write two short stories in a row, that next day I wake up and my brain goes, dude, you need to write another story, But if I haven't done it for a month, I'm just sort of like the lazy cat ran over the brown dog or whatever. Nothing's there if I'm not doing the work. But when I'm doing the work, it just flows.
That's so true. Yeah, you get more ideas when you're just in the middle of it already. That's so true. Yeah.
You mentioned basketball, being a basketball fan. Anytime I get a chance to talk sports, I like to talk sports on the show. So who, if you think back, you can think back to your childhood, or maybe folks you think of now, who are the creative basketball players that you could think of in your fandom?
Man, that's a really good question. I mean, geez. I mean, of my era, man, I would have almost had to think about that one for a little while, because I think of people like Tim Hardaway or something,
That's a fun one. I wouldn't have thought of Tim Hardaway. That's an interesting one.
Just the way he would handle the ball sometimes, I mean, of course you had like guys like Jason Williams,
I was immediately going to say Jason Williams when you said handling the ball.
Yeah. And people like that were fun. But, when I was a kid, I was a big Sean Kemp fan, just because the way he would dunk, I thought he always looked cool. I mean, like Dominique Wilkins, when he dunked, it wasn't just a dunk. It was like, is that a man? I don't know if that's a person or not.
They seem like some kind of rocket ship or something.
It just looks too cool.
Yeah. Sean Kemp spent one of his last years here in Orlando with the Magic. So it was like a pilgrimage just to see him on the court, just to like, I got to see him play, even though by that point he was, Ewing too. We had Ewing for like 6 games or something.
Yeah, those things are always so funny. Like there's like a whole bunch of those things where, it's like this player played for this team. You're like, what? I had no idea that he played for the Magic. What?
Yeah. No, Jason Williams is a good one. And for folks listening, if you're not a basketball fan, it's the Jason Williams who went to Marshall and then to Florida. And they called him White Chocolate. He was a smaller white dude, but he just did the craziest stuff on the court, just impossible things. No way you should think that you're going to be able to fit the ball through that window and pass it effectively. And Jay Williams could just do the craziest.
And coaches hated him, because anybody that liked him and tried to do what he did would be quickly reproached during basketball practice.
Right. And nobody can do, that's the thing, is like, when you have somebody like that, and this is true in music, I think it's true in acting, it's true in just so many different disciplines, and not just creative disciplines, but it's true in life in general. There are some people who just have certain acumen that can't be duplicated. You're just not going to do it that way. And I think and that's hard when you're a kid, especially watching somebody like that. I remember mimicking baseball players, for example, mimicking their stances, and how Morris would famously like move around in the box with his feet. Well, like that's not good for everybody else. Like Julio Franco would have his bat all crazy above his head. Like that is not what you need to do. But as a kid, you're like, that looks cool and it's different and it's interesting.
You want to do.
Exactly.
I even like the Chuck Knobloch, they would have a slack bat,
Yeah.
That looks funny. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, you can. He can. I think Alan Trammell used to do that too. A couple guys could do it, but they all end up in the same spot. And I think that's the interesting thing, other than maybe not Jason Williams. He was on a different planet. But
Absolutely.
but I think for the most part, whatever you're doing, those fundamentals have to be built, right? You need to learn the blues if you're going to go make crazy records that are blues based, but also are singing about Taco Bells, right? Or you need to learn your country chops if you're going to do that, and then sing about, whatever you're going to sing about. But having that base, is really important.
Yeah.
You have given so much, and I'm so grateful. I am curious, since you mentioned reading, we always end on what you're getting down on. So what art has you inspired? It could be a TV show or music or a painting you saw recently or a book you've been reading. Like, what creative works have had you fired up right now?
I actually have been reading, funny enough, Thomas Merton, the Catholic monk.
Uh-huh.
I've been reading his autobiography called 7-Story Mountain, which has been really interesting. I just yesterday listened to that new Buck Meek record, which was terribly inspiring.
I'm hearing about that.
Yeah, just so interesting. I mean, he's a fascinating music maker, I think. I'm trying to think of other stuff that's inspiring. There's another book I read recently that was interesting, by a guy named James Carse. And the book is called Finite and Infinite Games. And it's sort of like it's like game theory in some ways, but it sort of puts a lot of different human action into one of these two camps, either a finite or an infinite game, and just a really interesting way to look at the world. So I was really into that book, and I just finished that recently. There's a couple of things. Nice. Decided to watch Newsroom, the Sorkin thing. That's been pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's a couple bits there.
That's cool. That's really cool. All right, I got one more question for you then, and that is, when you released Farewell Hello, there was a beer bottle that would be mailed to you with a digital download. Are you going to shoot the next one out of a cannon at people, or like, do you have a sense? Is there anything can you reveal any wacky ideas you have for distribution of the next one?
I would like to. That one did kind of, in retrospect, feel a little environmentally irresponsible, because it was supposed to be, cathartic. You say farewell to something that you don't want, and then symbolically break your glass, and then you pull the record out as the new beginning. That was sort of the idea of it. But yeah, and people would send me, when we put that out, people would send me those videos like on Facebook or whatever, of here's me breaking my bottle. And after I watched several, I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this. It's like, conceptually, I like the idea, but when I saw these people throwing bottles against buildings, I was like, oh, that's my fault.
Well, I know it's such an interesting idea. It's so clever.
Yeah. A lot of glass.
I'm glad. Hopefully nobody got hurt. And
I don't think so.
Well, thank you so much, man. This has been such a pleasure, and I'm really excited to hear the new record whenever it's ready, and spread the word however I can. The kernalmusic.com, I think, for people, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
That's right.
So you can go get your records there. And I know you got at least Light Country on vinyl available, right? And then, okay. I need to go ahead and place an order myself, because I really enjoyed that record. And man, just once again, I'm so grateful for your time, and I'm really really thankful that I got a chance to not only meet you, but also do this deep dive into your music. It's been fun.
Well, I'm grateful for you too for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care, man.
All right. You too, man. See you later.
See you.
So I fish for a premonition off the docks of a waking time, a little injured and engendered by some battle cry, longing to a long gone bunch of hunches of the mind, and away I yanked the anchor, see what else that I could find.
The Kernal, y'all. Thank you so much, Kern. What a delight. What an incredible life he has lived, and what incredible music he continues to make. thekernalmusic.com for all things The Kernal, y'all. Check him out. Buy his records, buy his merch. He's a wonderful guy, and the music it speaks for itself. Thank you all so much for listening. I'm so grateful that you choose to spend some of your time with us. MarinadePodcast.com for all things The Marinade. Another shout out to Jordan joining the Patreon, y'all. If you can swing it, we'd love to have you over there. It's just a great way to connect with the show and so much fun. And we have more and more content that I'm going to be pumping out over there. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. I really appreciate it when we interact over there. Let us know what you want to see. Let us know what you want to hear. What do you want from the show? What can we do to continue to improve this experience? I'm very open to feedback, and I love those interactions over on social media. Everybody, if you can swing it, go out and create something. If you can't, don't beat yourself up about it. Cheers, y'all.